Hi, welcome back. Welcome back to 6 Feet Apart. Welcome back to virtual VSC. We are, what's it called? Hybrid back to school? Hybrid remote learning. We have Vermont-based artists and visiting artists and writers and visiting writers. And so just the other day I was able to speak with Charlotte Reber, who is Vermont Studio Center's IT personnel and has been working here for 3 years. And her brother, William Reber, was just in residence here. And so the two of them are collaborating on a book that I was able to peek in on them talking about this process. And here you go. Charlotte, take it away.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Reber. I'm a writer.
I'm Will Reber. I'm an illustrator.
We're working collaboratively on a book called Rumblins. I'm writing it. Will's illustrating it. Mm-hmm. We're siblings.
It's important to know.
It's important to know. It started with your drawings.
Yeah, so thought about making my own book to illustrate. Didn't really have much success in writing one. Couldn't really come up with a story that began and ended and had a middle and other things that are in stories, I guess. So I did that a couple times. I just couldn't make a book happen, and so then you entered the picture.
Yeah, because you had, I saw all the images. I think you were putting them on your portfolio on your website, or you were showing them to me or something, and I wanted to know what they were all about, and you didn't know. You clearly had this whole world kind of figured out, but there was no story.
Yeah.
So I threatened to write one, and then I did.
Yeah.
So I wrote the first story, which has become like the first chapter of the book. The book itself is now 7 independent short stories, each narrated by a different character, but the characters show up in each other's stories and kind of recurring, and their lives slowly become intertwined until they all end up meeting each other by the 7th story.
And it blew my mind. It was so great. You sent in the mail or the email, and it was so fun. Oh, these are my ideas, but I'm not telling them, and they sound so fresh. And a lot of them were your ideas, and like the characters were brand new.
And I kind of stole the plot from a different picture book you never made. That you told me about
involving a plane.
Yeah, I mean the two main characters crash a plane. They're in a world where flying has been banned. There's giant mushrooms, but that's just kind of every day. Adventure story.
But it was, and it was fun because I think some of the images that I sent you kind of wound up in the first story. It was like, oh yeah, that's based on that scene, but it didn't have a story before. So I think I was just like, you're hired, or I was the one being hired, I don't know, but.
So then from there, I wrote a second story, which same world, different characters. We thought maybe there'd be kind of a series of these. I don't quite know what we thought at the time. And then you did illustrations specific to that story.
Yeah.
And then I wrote another story based on that, and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there.
Yeah, so I think that was kind of the transition was, and then the second story was, okay, I'm going to write something and you can accompany it.
Yeah.
And then by the third story, it was more, we were both involved in the story process. Mm-hmm. Eventually we got into this process where it would be, I had the very original digital drawings that I'd given to you, then you were writing stories based on those, and then I'm creating new drawings based off the stories based off my old drawings.
And we're living in completely different states at this point. We're just sending things back and forth. I call our collaborative approach the ping pong method because we just kind of keep throwing things at each other and then reacting to it.
I love that. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay.
Like a couple of these stories are completely you, and then some of them I had some suggestions for.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about the characters is that some of them, like 2 of them in particular, were kind of my invention, at first visually, and kind of in name and some of their
2 in that one.
In that painting. They just kind of stayed, and you came up with more of a backstory.
Yeah,
and
you had their names and stuff.
But what's interesting is I think like I drew this character in this weird cloak and a top hat kind of thing, and this weird garb, and didn't really explain that. I just wanted to draw that, and then Shaw decided, oh, it's this religious order that she's part of.
Well, I remember you telling me that.
Oh yeah, sure, that's what it was.
Well, because this was the second story is where you meet them. So like he's an expert in the city, and he's kind of giving her a tour. And she needs to learn the whole way around the city, but I don't know why. I just started thinking, oh, she's mapping it. I don't know where that came from. I just immediately knew that's what they were up to.
That was lucky. You're great at explaining, because I think that's why we feed off well. Is I'll sometimes have some visual element. that I can't explain, and you'll go, oh yeah, well, that's because of this. And I think, oh, I never would have thought of that. But without each other, we wouldn't have
You're
had the
great
idea.
at coming up with those like just story moments of like, this is a piece of art, I don't know how they got in this situation or even quite what's going on here, but it's really striking and interesting. And then I go, oh, well, I can figure out how they got there, but I never would have come up with something that unique myself.
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah.
But then some characters you invented completely, and I had nothing to do with.
Yeah, I mean, those two, you had a visual and a names for them, and then a couple of the others, like Fletch and Drake, I saw these two characters in a picture and just created them from that, but you didn't have names or backstories or anything for them, and then some of the others are completely...
That I have nothing to do with.
Yeah.
And those are interesting because then I'm given just the text to work from. They weren't based off any of my ideas, so it's sort of starting from the ground up. But that hasn't really felt harder. I think it's more interesting sometimes, where it's like, oh, I don't know anything about this character, but what would I if I had to make this character, visually, what would it be like?
Yeah, like Turk I made up, but I had no idea what she looked like until you drew her.
Yeah, which is funny because that's an example. Like that character is based off some people I know. I think. Well, I will not say, but so immediately it just made me think. Oh, that makes me think of this person. So that helped, trigger that visually. I kind of took a break from illustrating the book while staying here, which was not entirely intentional. I thought I'd start some new ideas just on the side and then go back to working on it and start the new painting.
You needed a break. You've been on the same painting for 3 months straight.
Oh, yeah. I got a little carried away, so a break was due. But we've been meeting. I sent you some sketches that you hadn't seen before.
Yep.
And did some talking about what's the next step in all this.
Yeah. We're at a point where it's mostly written. There's a couple gaps. It's tricky enough trying to get an agent as an illustrator or as a writer, and we're a little unusual, or a lot unusual, in that we're writing something that's like young adult novel length and kind of young adult or maybe lower young adult age range, but is illustrated. For whatever reason, that's just not how they work. So we're trying to figure out how to pitch this in a way that, even though it's unusual in these 3 or 4 or 5 ways, this is still absolutely something you need.
But it's learning, it's always helpful to spend that much time on something when you're starting out, but...
Oh, we keep saying, okay, we're not allowed to talk about book 2, we're not allowed to talk about book 2, and then we finally cracked it at one point, like, okay, but in book 2, this needs to happen, and these characters need to come back, but then we need to introduce these people, and...
Yeah.
I love how they just obviously love each other and support each other. It's just very sweet siblings. So, all right, see you later.